Hey everyone, so the last few videos I made on the Terraforming Mars data collection project received an unexpected amount of attention, and I even had people that I played against on BGA message me in the chat and encouraging me to make more videos, so here we are yet again. When I first started out this project a couple of months ago, my ambition was to collect the largest dataset of Terraforming Mars game logs ever collected and to make it publicly available for everyone to be able to run their own analysis. And with the help of my newfound friends over at the Hodgepodge Discord, we're slowly starting to make this a reality. So today I'm announcing my latest addition to our suite of analysis tools. And if I just head over to the address bar here and type in tfmstats.com, that'll take me to a new website that I just published today. And here we can see an overview of the data that we have collected, a total of 15,635 game logs, full game logs, and we have indexed a total of 17,000 games. So these are additional games that are ready to be collected. Here you can also download the entire data set. This will be a zip file containing 15,000 JSON files. So this archive is a little over 400 megabytes. You can see some additional stats here, like the number of total players that we have indexed. These are the average and median ELO numbers for the games that we have collected. But I realized that these JSON files might not be the most accessible way to analyze the data for everyone. So I've started working on a few dashboards that you can access over here on the left menu. So here we have an overview of all the corporations, and we have similar data to what you've seen in my previous video with the win rate and average ELO gain and the number of times played and the average ELO of the players that played this corporation. And we have some filters here on the left menu. So, Poseidon, this is a Colonies corporation, and so is Eridor. These are on top. So Colonies was recently introduced on Board Game Arena. So we don't have a lot of games on these corporations yet. So these numbers might not be that reliable. So what I can do then is go down here and filter out all the Colonies games, and now they will disappear. I also see we have the beginner corporation here with only 2 games. Might not be that interesting. So let's put a cutoff to at least 10 times played, and now we get a little bit of a better list here of our top corporations. We also have some additional filters here, so we can filter on the map, and personally I've played most of my games on Tharsis, so maybe that's more interesting to me, and I like to focus on 2-player games. Most of the games in this dataset are 2-player games on Tharsis, so that makes a lot of sense. Friendly mode games aren't necessarily that interesting. Here you can select like the different game speeds you want to focus on. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this filter. By default, we're sorting this table by win rate, and I briefly discussed this with Anthracite, who led the efforts to collect game logs on Steam, and who also happens to be one of the strongest players in the world. That win rate might not always be the best representation of the strength of a card, because you can see here, if you sort by average ELO, there's quite a bit of a difference from VTOR with an average ELO of 545 all the way down to UNMI with 400. So average ELO gain adjusts for that by accounting for the differences in ELO. And here we see Interplanetary Cinematics, also known as IC, on top. It's actually on top both in terms of win rate and average ELO gain. Phobolog, unsurprisingly, at the bottom. But here's where having these filters can come in handy, because I noticed if I filter for only Prelude games, IC is no longer on top. We have Valley Trust and Point Luna. So if I switch to only non-Prelude games, IC is now on top by a pretty big margin, like 62% almost, and average ELO gain of 2.7, which I would say is quite significant. So how do we explain this? Well, I think without Preludes you don't get a lot of help in the beginning. Whereas, IC, if you can find some early steal targets, this is the corporation with the highest starting capital. So it does kind of make sense that this corporation can be very strong in a non-Prelude format. Another fun thing you can do, if I just reset some of these filters here, is you can search for players. So I'd like to know what my own best corporations are. So I'm gonna search for myself, and what do you know? I have a perfect score with Unimi. Only 3 games though. Whereas I seem to be struggling a bit more with Inventrix, so not a whole lot of games, but maybe there's some room for improvement there. You might not find yourself in this data set because we've only scraped the games of a few players so far, and I just happened to scrape my own games at the beginning because I was running this project, but we're slowly incorporating more and more players into this data set. Okay, so I noticed something interesting here, that VTOR was the most popular corporation among stronger players and had a pretty good win rate, but not a good ELO score. So let's check out this particular corporation for some more details. So here we have a bunch of things we can look at. For instance, the average score of VTOR. So fun fact, VTOR has the highest average score of any corporation in the dataset, and also the highest number of victory points on cards out of any corporation. But I was interested in this ELO change number, which is in the red. And we can analyze this distribution down here, which is similar to ones that we've looked at before. There's a lot of green right here, which is strong players beating much weaker opponents. But like if I go, for instance, here, there's a bar with players losing 10 to 12 rating points. So there are 101 games. Whereas if I go here to between 10 and 12 ELO points gained, there are only 62 games. So it shows me that VTOR is not performing that well in evenly matched games. And if I apply some of my filters here, it's probably going to look pretty much the same because, like I said, most of the games are 2-player Farsis games. And out of interest, what if I set the minimum ELO here to 700? Now all of a sudden, players actually gain ELO with VTOR. So yeah, it seems like the very strongest players certainly know how to play VTOR. How about in the 600 to 700 range? Not that great actually, and 600 games is not nothing. So interesting. So we have some charts here. You can also look at all the games in a table. So VTOR is it has the highest average score, despite not having necessarily the best stats overall. So that means it probably has some pretty ridiculous scores sometimes. So let's have a look. And GLaDOS 93, this is one of the guys who has been actually contributing to the data collection project on Discord, and 218 points in just 12 generations, the absolute mad lad. So if I'm curious about how this could happen, I can just click on this, and that will take me to the table page where I can also view the replay of this game. If you're ever curious about how you can score over 200 points in 12 generations of base plus Prelude Terraforming Mars, this is the place to go. But I want to go back and have a look at some Preludes actually. So let's go to the Preludes overview. Here we have all of them. Now this page doesn't have the filters yet. That's probably coming pretty soon, but at least you can see all the Preludes here. We can sort by ELO gain again. Results are a little bit different than in my previous video on Preludes. So here we have Unimi Contractor on top. I remember mentioning this specifically as a Prelude. I was a bit surprised to see at the middle of the pack, whereas now it's actually on top in terms of ELO gain, whereas for win rate we see Experimental Forest still. Also Metal Rich Asteroid. Supply Drop was another one I mentioned. I was a bit surprised to see further down the list, but now it's climbed up here. So yeah, and if we sort in the other direction, Here we'll find, to no one's surprise, society support with a 15% win rate. Absolutely appalling. So this goes to show that, sometimes picking the wrong prelude can have even more of an impact on your chances of winning than picking a bad corporation. Of course, you do get 4 preludes, so usually you have more options to choose something better. Sort by elo gain, biosphere support is still below society support, so really a bad one as well. But let's go back to experimental forest. This was a good one. So if you go to the details page, this one is a little bit different. We don't have the same data as for corporations, but one notable difference here is the win rate by corporation. So here we can look at combinations, and what this chart is showing is the win rate difference above or below the global average if you combine this prelude with different corporations. So we can see, interplanetary cinematics boosts the chances of winning with experimental forest. Now we should of course note that IC has a very good win rate in this data set to begin with, so that's something we need to keep in mind. This chart does not adjust for that. Interesting, like Ecoline, minus 3.7%. You'd think this one was pretty good for Ecoline, but I guess, Ecoline can usually take care of the oxygen track and produce greeneries anyway, so maybe not the most useful for that corporation. So I'm guessing like what preludes could be good for Ecoline. I'm thinking, probably oceans and heat prod. So let's have a look at, for instance, Mohole. And yeah, sure enough, Ecoline, most improved corporation, or the corporation that most improves this prelude. And UNMI at the bottom, you'd maybe think that this was a decent prelude for UNMI, but keep in mind that UNMI does have one of the worst win rates overall in this data set, so you'll find this one at the bottom quite often. But let's go back and look at what are the most played preludes. So we find Allied Banks and Business Empire on top. Not really a big surprise. I mean, these are just like generically good. I mean, when are you ever not going to need MC prod? Also a great aquifer, like when is ever getting 2 oceans for free? Not a good deal. So what are some of the most popular preludes that aren't that great maybe? So I see Acquired Space Agency here with a not the best of win rates or elo gains. So what I suspect here is that a lot of players will just pick this one, hoping to find a good space target that they can play with the 6 titaniums. Probably not a great idea most of the time. You'd rather have a titanium target in your hand already. At least that's my thinking. One that sticks out here, of course, that we talked about before is Galilean Mining. Pretty awful stats, but it's played quite often. So let's have a look at this one. And of course, Saturn Systems has the best effect, or is the best combination with this one. Not really a surprise. And Robinson Industries is the least improved corporation alongside this one. I know it makes total sense. With Robinson, you can increase your titanium prod twice for a total of 8 MC. So why would you pay 5 MC and the opportunity cost of an entire prelude just to boost your titanium production twice with Robinson? It doesn't make any sense. So I can totally understand why this has such an awful win rate. So let's look at some other ones. How about early settlement? That's a bad one. I would guess, Farsis Republic. Well, actually, Farsis Republic is not the most improved corporation. Mining Guild, that also makes total sense. Mining Guild loves to place tiles. So Mining Guild is probably going to place a tile on a mineral to get their steel production up. Makes sense. Again, we find Robinson here. Again, that makes sense. Robinson, you can just increase your plant production with 4MC from the get-go. So why are you picking this corporation? Makes me wonder if you go to self-sufficient settlement, if that one, my hypothesis would be that this one is a little better for Robinson. Actually, Robinson improves this corporation the most. That's really interesting, because while you don't necessarily need titanium or plant production in Robinson, you'd love to have some MC production so you can use your ability to boost the other parts of the production line. Again, makes sense. You know, you just love to see it when these numbers actually make logical sense. And Farsis Republic and Mining Guild, again, makes sense. And we're starting to see some sort of pattern emerge here. If we go and look at, for instance, power generation, you can probably guess which corporation performs the worst alongside this one. And I must admit, I already looked at this, but you know, sure enough, Forgate does not have a problem with getting enough power, so this one is not that useful. Okay, let's look at some actual project cards. We have a total of 264 cards in this list. Again, some of them are colonies cards, so they haven't been played a whole lot, so the numbers may not be all that reliable. You know, as I mentioned before, I think probably average elo gain is the number that makes the most sense to look at. But here we have a bunch of cards that haven't been played all that much. So I'm gonna just filter this by having at least 100 games. On top here we find still some colonies cards, but you know, Warp Drive, Spin-off Department, Skydog, Spaceport Colony. I'm not the biggest expert on colonies, but I've seen, you know, the videos of Fred Pacifist, so I know that these cards are absolutely insane. So not really surprised to see them all the way up here. But I think if I increase my filter here to, let's say, 200 games, most of the colonies cards should be out. We now have the base plus prelude cards, which have a lot more data behind these stats. So at the top of the list, we do find some familiar faces. I mean, AGT, Earth Catapult, AI Central, Mask Murder. These are known as some of the best cards in the game. Now, I should mention that these win rates are based on when the card was actually played. And of course, you know, when you get to play AGT, it's gonna be good, but it does require 7 science tags. It's probably the best card in the game when you get to play it, but it can be pretty tricky to get down. You know, same thing goes for AI Central, Mask Murder, and also, you know, Lake Marineris, obviously an extremely efficient card when you get to play it for 2 oceans, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's that great if you get it in your opening hand, let's say. So we started collecting data on when cards were seen and drawn and when the player had actually an option to buy it. And we're probably going to include that data in these overviews as well, because I think that'll be really interesting to look at. But let's look at some individual cards. So one of the guys on Discord showed me some numbers and asked if I could guess what card produced those stats, and I was correctly able to identify Immigrant City, and let's have a look at why that is. So Immigrant City, you know, gives you a city, but it reduces your energy and MC production, but then you get an additional MC production every time a city is placed. And in the card details page, here we have some other charts, so we can look at both win rates and average elo gain by generation, and also the distribution of which generation the card was played. And here we see something interesting, because while this card is usually played around generation 8 or 9, it's played quite a lot in the beginning, but the win rate and elo gain is a lot worse at the beginning. And why is that? Well, you know, you'd think that it's good to play this card early because, you know, then you lose some MC reduction, but then you gain it all back and then some when other people play cities. But that's not quite how it works. Especially like in 2-player games where you don't see a lot of cities played. You know, getting this hit to your production early on can be absolutely brutal. So that's why, you know, this is generally considered a sort of a trap if you play it in the beginning, but much better as like a late game play. So what if we increase the elo range of this card? So let's say 300, and like if I just keep going here, how does that affect the chart? We see now the win rate over here is actually starting to sort of flatten out. And what you'll see if you also pay attention to the generation distribution here is that as we move along the ELO axis, we start to normalize this win rate across generations. You get to the strongest players. What happens is that since those strong players know that this card is not great if you play it early, they don't play it early. So they play it like around Gen 9, which is often when games are starting to approach sort of an end in high-level games. And you see the win rate is sort of evenly distributed because the few times that the strong players actually do play Immigrant City early, maybe it was good that time, who knows. But I just found that interesting. And I can certainly think of a few other cards where this might be the case. So like the first one that comes to mind would be IO Mining Industries. Extremely expensive card. This is one that I see, strong players will only play it in the beginning. So let's say 600 and up. You see the generation distribution here. This is an early play. If you have to play it by like Gen 8, it's probably not going to be worth it most of the time. So let's do the opposite. Let's look for instance, players with a rating of 200 or less. They actually prefer to play this card later in the game. Maybe once they've collected enough Jovian tags that they can capitalize on the points. Or maybe they just have enough money to play it by then. But here you see the stats tell a clear tale that it's not very good. Even if you score, I don't know how many points. Let's say you score 5 points with this card, it's still extremely expensive, not very very efficient. But of course, it can score a boatload of points and even be worth it if you play it late in the game in the most extreme cases. So just out of curiosity, let's have a look and sort this by the number of VP scores of 13 points, 12 points. So here Aspirin scored. He played the card in Gen 12 and scored 12 points with IO Mining. Now it says here his rating is 249, but this is one of the strongest players in the world, and he had a massive score with the Jovian strategy, obviously. What are the most popular cards to play? We can also look at that. Most times played, that award goes to Research Outpost. This one is obviously a very strong card and has no requirements, so that shouldn't come as a surprise. Invention Contest, Tech Demo, Viral Enhancers, Marsu. These are cards that are just very easy to play and cheap. And then we find EarthCat. So there you see the difference between anti-gravity technology and EarthCat. Both give the same global discount, but EarthCat is just so much easier to play, and that's why I think in general it's going to be the better card overall. I could look at these stats all day long, but I think in the name of brevity, I'm going to end it here. I'll probably come back with some more focused videos later on, and this is an ongoing project, so we're going to have more different stats showing up here after a while, but I leave it up to you for now to check out the numbers yourself and see what you think. You can do that, as mentioned, as tfmstats.com. And with that, I hope you enjoyed the video and see you around.